This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Chirco, and my sidekick and partner in crime alongside with me in the studio, as usual, is the Doc from Doc and Jock. That is John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
How was your Memorial Day weekend, Vito? It's nice to see you in the studio. I know we're going to do a lot of podcasts this evening. Thank you again for filling in for Adam. I know that he's enjoying his vacation. It sounds like everything's going well with the Jock in Jamaica. I can't wait to catch up with him next week, but you will be filling in for Adam on the Doc and Jock podcast. I always look forward to the Tigers Talk podcast with you, and especially Two Bad Hombres. We have a lot of guests this week that will be featured on our platform. Thanks a lot to you for all your efforts in booking all these great guests. It'll be a fun time this evening podcasting, talking about the Tigers and the week that was. Arguably, I don't know if there's been a week that has been more tumultuous for the Detroit Tigers than the week that was, highlighted by a lot of comments made by Brad Ausmus and even the commentators for the Detroit Tigers, both in the radio booth and on television, talking about the issue of the day, the one that everybody's talking about. I jumped on it right away Saturday when I heard it. I was like, you cannot be serious. Brad Ausmus cannot be talking about the Tigers and the players being tired. And when you look at it to start, Vito, you and I are both hardworking people. You and I are trying to elevate the stature of the shows that we're doing, working hard with the platform, trying to elevate the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You're doing several different projects. You're a great writer. You're doing great podcasts. I myself am doing a wide variety of things, well documented, as you always like to say, the man with 6-7 different jobs. So to hear that, I thought to myself, wow, they really are in a situation where they have a lack of awareness regarding public relations. Fine. Let's say, for example, Vito, the Detroit Tigers are tired. They got into Houston really late. They struggled. Then they go on to Chicago really late. Fine. You don't come out and say that to the media to address the schedule, to address millionaire athletes being tired. Because my first reaction was an eye roll. That was my first legitimate reaction, was to roll my eyes and say, listen, you got to get up there and you got to get going. I mean, when you come here, don't you feel a little bit uplifted by the talks that we have? Like, look, let's go do this. Let's have a great podcast. Let's get excited. You know, we're texting each other about the show content. You may be tired. I may be tired, but we get up for it because we're passionate about what we're doing. And you don't know right now if I'm tired, if I got to bed last night at 5 a.m. or got up at 7. No, because one, there's such a thing called coffee. I'm drinking it right now. I'm going to have a nice little sip.
Coffee does help out a ton. I am drinking it now more and more. Now, I don't know. I don't want to change the conversation here. It's about the Tigers being tired. But I think it helps out. Coffee does with not being tired. Now, do you drink it black, though?
Here at the office, I drink the coffee black. I usually have 2 cups of coffee a day. In the morning, I like it with the French vanilla cream. Here in the office, straight black.
French vanilla cream is very nice. Hazelnut, that creamer is very nice as well. And maybe the Tigers need some coffee, some dark coffee, or just some creamer to get caffeinated, because they need to be caffeinated, re-energized, because they can't be tired. I don't care that they were on the road and for this long stretch, Doc.
When I tweeted you, your response was perfect. Yes, there are a myriad of problems outside of the Tigers being tired. But what was your first reaction when you heard that, and how did you hear the news? Was it through the first time it came out through the media, or from me? How did you hear the news about the Tigers being tired?
Probably from you. And then I'm thinking, for me with all the stuff that I do, you know what? I'm up late too. And I deal with it. I get up the next day and think about it. I can sleep in, that's something that I throw out there that people don't want to hear. Oh, you sleep in, a little bit, which for me is like 9 a.m., by the way. Okay, so it's not that long of sleeping in. I'm not like a high school or a college kid who's sleeping in until 10 or 11. But my point here is, after a long night out playing baseball for the Tigers, their players, they can sleep in, can't they? What do they really have to get up for the next day? Until the game time now it could be an early afternoon game the next day. Now, if it's not a matinee, though, they don't play until 7:10 at Comerica. So them playing a late night game, a game that goes not only 9, but goes extras and lasts 3.5 hours or 4 hours, let's say, which all their games have been marathon games, haven't they? Too long of games. Well, it is a toll, right? It's mentally and physically taxing on the players. Thing is, they can sleep in the next day, re-energize, and be ready for the next day's game. I mean, that's what I do. I sleep in a little bit, and then I'm re-energized. I'm ready for what I have to get done in that given day. Why can't they take that route, take that approach, and get better prepared for each game themselves, when they should be prepared for each and every single game, when they're making millions of dollars, as many of them on the Tigers roster are? And we know that. Too many of those guys are making big money, too.
Brad Osmond's job as the manager of the Tigers is also to kind of keep this kind of stuff, squelched. Let's say, for example, you walk in and you know your team is tired. You see it in their eyes. They're not with it. Don't you think then his job is to boost the morale of the team, do whatever you can to get them going? Yes, understandable. They're in a stretch. They're playing on the road, a couple series. It's a long road trip. You have to kind of also understand the pulse of the fans. The fans don't want to hear that the Tigers are tired. Nobody supports that. Maybe a few handful of people will say, oh, yeah, I support that, or I can understand them flying all over the place and being tired. But
those are the real snowflakes. You called me a snowflake, by the way, this past weekend. Those are the true snowflakes, Doc.
I could not understand the thinking behind talking about it. If your team is tired, you got to do whatever you can to boost morale. You got to fire up the squad. You got to keep that stuff in-house. To come out and say, well, let's give credit to Houston, let's give credit to the schedule. No, here's what you do. You just say, look, we got to come in, game out. We got to overcome hurdles. We have to overcome the challenges that are faced in front of us. Because what do you think is going to happen in the postseason? You think they're just going to walk in, should the Tigers make it, and everything be perfect? The lineup will be perfect. Everybody's going to be batting. Everybody's going to be healthy. All the starters are going to be throwing in form. The bullpen's going to be perfect. No. In order to become a championship-level club, you have to face adversity. You have to have challenges. You have to have the ability to know how to handle things that are going to come that you're not prepared for. So what he did was he lit off a firestorm. The fans are pissed. Many have jumped off the bandwagon, and I was highly upset because, I'm not going to be the kind of person that's going to be here and be like, look, I don't make this much money, and these guys make $200 million. Here's what I'm going to say, okay? Sunday, I got the opportunity to go cover the LPGA, okay? Do I look like a golf analyst, Vito?
Not at all. Trust me.
So Saturday, I have a full day, okay? I'm a psychologist, a full-time psychologist, and running this podcast network. All right, so I'm seeing clients from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., okay? Where do I go? Do I go home and rest? No, it's my wife's birthday week. So she wanted to go to a nice Cuban restaurant for the first time. She wanted to go downtown and dance the night away. No problem. We dance until 1 o'clock in the morning. Get home at 2 o'clock. You know what time I got up Sunday morning to drive an hour to Ann Arbor? I went to bed at 2 o'clock. I got up at 5:40 a.m. I woke up and the room was spinning because I was like, what did I just do? But I'm like, you know what? I was excited to go do it. I wanted to go cover the event. I wanted to get the story. I wanted to meet the leader of the tournament. I wanted to go see what the LPGA was all about in Ann Arbor. So I got up at 5:40 a.m., boom, out the door at 6, got to the golf course at 7, right ahead of the first, group that was going to go off on Sunday, 7:30 a.m. Boom, I was right there. Okay, now I'm not going to talk about anybody else, but there was only one other media member walking the 18 holes with the leaders. Okay, it was me and one other person, and I didn't know who it was, but I got to, meet him. His name was Ira. I didn't get a chance because we were kind of observing what was going on to see what outlet he worked for, but there was no other, media outlet kind of walking with the group. So I went there and covered it all day long, got home at 5 o'clock.
So when did they show up, the other media members, by the way? Not to totally change the course of this conversation.
When I walked back to the media center, all the writers were there. So it wasn't like...
So they were there at some point, obviously, just maybe not for the whole entire day like you were.
I was walking with the lead group from hole number 1 all the way to hole number 18. And if you want proof, I was on the Golf Channel, baby. It was awesome.
And you were loving that.
And I sent it to you.
Yep.
But listen, I'm not here to brag. I'm here to say this. If you're passionate about something, you go do it. And if you followed us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, you realize, okay, John's not a seasoned LPGA golf reporter, but he went out there. He spoke to the leader before she went off. He watched her, on the putting green. He asked her, hey, how are you feeling about your game today? Boom, watched her play 18 holes of golf with the group, with the threesome that she was playing with. Watched every single shot that they took. Came back to the media center. Boom, asked some questions. And got featured on the LPGA Twitter page because one of my questions got answered and they tweeted it out. So that's what you do if you're passionate about something and you're crazy enough to go do it. Yes, was I tired? What do you think? Went to bed at 2 and got up at 5:40. Okay? But do you think that there was going to be any chance I didn't go? Hell no. I was going to go do it and perform, and I think if you followed us, you saw the fun that we had. So here's my point with the Tigers, okay? Fine. Whatever the reason of the performance, whether it be talent, lack of energy, lack of sleep, guys partying, whatever the reason, you can't say that to your fan base.
No, you don't admit it.
Because all you did was, for me, you turned me off and you said, damn, I would go in there and light a fire under everybody and be like, Mario Pemba comes out and tells the audience, look, I walked in the clubhouse and I looked in their eyes and they looked defeated and tired. He didn't say defeated, he said they looked tired on the broadcast. You know what I would have did? I would have slapped someone upside the head and said, let's go. Something I want to bring up to you in a few minutes here is you got to realize John Morosi put out some information that put the clock on the Tigers. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So for that reaction is also inexcusable. But for me, the whole tired issue is something that I'm passionate about in that athletes need to grind and they got to get going. I don't care if it's 162 games. I want more gamers. Even if it's just one. You don't have one gamer come out and say, look, we got to do a much better job. Hey,
one person come out and say that's a pitiful excuse, and then it's about more than that. As I tweeted about, you brought it up. Thank you for mentioning that, by the way. A little plug for me, at Vito Jerome. I am on Twitter. The podcast network, at Detroit Podcast. Now, my point that I wanted to bring up is that you're right. They can't admit even if they are tired. And when you have a myriad of problems, as you noted, Doc, with the back end of the rotation, back end of the pen, the lineup as a whole not being good enough, it's about more than being tired anyways. So being tired is not a reason, because you can see why they might get tired on a long road trip. It's been a brutal, almost now a complete 11-game road trip that makes you tired. Thing is, you can't admit it as a ball club. And for the Tigers, it's not because they're tired why they're losing some games. They're losing because they're not as talented. And they're getting defeated, and sometimes badly, because of the gap in talent.
For those that are in favor of the Tigers and support them, would you maybe argue that, look, when you look at the numbers, you look at the swings, you look at the complete team struggling. I mean, they damn near had 49 strikeouts in the 4-game series versus the White Sox. Do you say to yourself, okay, the travel schedule is a factor in that, the team was not able to pick up the baseball and their reaction times was delayed? Because then you fast forward to Monday, they have some rest, their offense returns, JD blasts a 3-run home run, they come back, they show fight. Do you, in essence, see their side of things and maybe just say, you know what, they just shouldn't have vocalized it. They should have just tried anything in their power to overcome it and maybe split versus the White Sox? Or do you have any kind of support for the Tigers in terms of this road trip?
Well, losing 3 out of 4 to the White Sox, no matter that it's
tough
on the road, is pitiful. You can't be doing that when you're trying to win. Now, my thing is, to another point I wanted to bring up, is that when you're winning ball games, you're not going to bring up that you're tired. You only bring it up when you're losing. Now, a road stretch of games that's 11 games in total, that's a big road stretch. A little bit unfair, and Ausmus and the team might think that deep down, but once again, even if the schedule makers did make it unfair on you for how long your road trip had to be at this given point in the season, you don't admit it. And once again, they wouldn't admit it. Ausmus would have never even thought about saying that to the media if it wasn't for the fact that they've been losing a lot more than they've been winning on this road trip.
Yeah, unbelievable. How embarrassing is it to lose to Mike Pelfrey? Friday night, it was one of those beautiful nights. So what I did was kind of got some cocktails lined up, set up a bonfire. I had 2 over the weekend. I had one on Friday and one on Monday, the day of Memorial Day. Sat down, had Fox Sports Go on in the background, had a Bose speaker ready, kicking and ready to go. And the words I was hearing coming out of the speaker were making me sip my beer a lot faster. You know what the words I was hearing that were coming out of that jukebox? That Bose high-quality speaker. Pelfrey with the strikeout. Pelfrey with the strikeout. Pelfrey with the strikeout. I was looking, I was like, get out of here. Justin Rose, friend of the podcast, he tweeted out to the masses. He said, losing to Mike Pelfrey would be the most Tigers thing ever. And I'm sitting there listening and I'm going, oh my goodness. The Detroit Tigers are paying Mike Pelfrey $8 million to come out there and embarrass them.
Yeah, to beat them.
It was
right?
hilarious.
That's defeating. If anything's defeating to a ball club, to its morale, it's that losing to a guy that's now in the starting rotation that wasn't even good enough to crack the Tigers' opening day starting rotation, not even their bullpen to start off the season.
And you had Rod Allen, in the 3rd inning, 4th inning, 5th inning, kind of pleading, kind of saying like, look, Mike Pelfrey's not that good. This is a guy that the 3rd time through the lineup is gonna be ready to give up some runs. And then you just kept hearing strikeout after strikeout.
The case, 5 and 10 batters he had at one point. I mean, you can't allow that to happen against Mike Pelfrey? No.
So the Tigers were embarrassed Friday. They at least split on Saturday. At least they got the victory in the second game of the doubleheader. That first game wasn't that great. The second game, they got an opportunity to get a lead, but Justin Wilson couldn't slam the door shut. Gives up a lot of ninth-inning runs, and we were at the restaurant going, come on now. We were all gripping, right? Running around third base, one out, I believe. Justin Wilson doing some damage, and you're like, oh boy. I literally thought they were one run away from basically having the entire season, the entire fan base turn on them. If he would have had 4 runs being given up and had the game be tied in that ninth inning, I think the entire fan base would have erupted because everybody let out a sigh of relief at the restaurant. We were like, okay, good. At least they got a split, in the doubleheader versus Chicago. But then on Sunday, you get embarrassed. You get walloped, and you look at it and you go, oh my goodness, this is not the performance that Jordan Zimmerman needed. This is not what this entire ball club needed. It highlights the struggles of a pitcher that you're paying a lot of money to. So there are, like you said in your tweet, a lot of issues. But if you were to blame one or two things, the two most pressing things right now that are crushing the Detroit Tigers, what would you pinpoint?
Well, it's becoming more and more readily present, or it's becoming more and more of a thing that I'm becoming aware of. It's that Al Avila made a lot of bad decisions. In the offseason after 2015, when he took over as a full-time GM from his predecessor, Dave Dombrowski, who left to become the team president of the Boston Red Sox, Al Avila made the decision to sign Jordan Zimmerman.
This is bad.
That is bad. To trade for Francisco Rodriguez, which worked out last year. He saved 44 games last season, but now removed from the closer role. And
why?
Going into Memorial Day, just listen to this stat here. K-Rod, Anibal Sanchez, and Jordan Zimmerman were dead last in individual WAR on the Tigers team. -0.8, according to BaseballReference.com. Those 3 guys making all the money that they are, Sanchez and Jordan Zimmerman especially, with a negative WAR, -0.8. What a trio of pitchers that the Tigers want to cut ties with. Cut ties with so bad, they would do anything to get rid of, I think, any 3 of those guys at this point. And Anibal Sanchez, they have in AAA as a nice gesture almost to Anibal on what he's done before in a Tigers uniform. Jordan Zimmerman is the one making a ton of money, who is signed long term. That's even more worrisome and should be even more worrisome to the Tigers fan base, because his contract isn't just going to go away soon here. It isn't. So Zimmerman, living with that annual salary of $20 million plus, that's a lot that is riding on the payroll, taking up payroll space that the Tigers don't want to get rid of. And the thing is, at this point, after what he did in the second half last year after getting hurt, when he came back from the DL, wasn't good, wasn't sharp, hasn't been effective yet this season. Will he realistically turn it around? It's hard to say so at this juncture in his career. And K-Rod, too, they'll be glad once he is gone after this season, too, because he is no longer that closer-esque relief pitcher, nor is he a guy that even looks to be capable of pitching in the middle innings of ball games right now, as he's been miserable, allowing the long ball, and it's going to be a tough decision, or a tough few months here to see, Al Avila, what he does intend on doing, because now the onus is on him to make big-time decisions. And after this season as well, the onus even becomes more on him to make moves, and some moves that will be highly impactful to the state of the Tigers and to what they become going into future seasons. As right now, the uncertain state they exist in, the Tigers, that is, it is largely resting upon the shoulders of Al Avila. That level of uncertainty that is existent throughout the entire Tigers organization. A lot of the blame now has to be placed upon the shoulders of Al Avila, who I think has gotten a free pass for a long time, and we've harped on the mistakes, the deficiencies of Brad Ausmus as the Tigers skipper. But now it's time to harp upon and to get after Al Avila for his mistakes as well. And a lot of them which date back to the offseason after the 2015 campaign concluded, which also makes me have to bring up that it wasn't just Jordan Zimmerman that he signed to a big long-term deal or just lucrative deal. It was also Justin Upton, who has the opt-out clause, remember, after this season concludes. Thing is, for J-Up, if he doesn't improve upon his numbers, and he's been good, kind of secretly or quietly good, because people slam him all the time, don't they? And he has struggled since the month of April concluded. But in the grand scheme of things, Upton has been one of the 5 best players on the Tigers roster this season. Now, will he keep it up? Because he has to improve his hitting, his ways. Because in May, he wasn't that great at the plate. Now, in June, he's got to be much better. But if he sustains some kind of consistent production that is at the plate going forward this season, he's a guy you want to keep. But if he does really, really well and produces huge numbers for his home run and RBI totals, guess what? He would opt out of his deal. The thing is, the Tigers will be on the books for a lot of money with Jay Up if he struggles the rest of the way this season, because he will know that even if he opts out, he will not make anything close to what he's making with the Tigers right now, will not make immensely more money on the open market either, with that being said. So for him, it is all about what he does going forward. If he does really, really well, he will opt out. If he doesn't, he will be a Tiger once again next season. As you know, he will definitely opt in to his deal.
I can respect that, Vito. You're going right up the chain of command, and you're seeing that the moves made by Al Avila haven't been good enough to sustain any certain kind of success, and we are potentially 1 month away from the Tigers being blown up. And after the guest that we get on the phone line, I think we'll talk about John Morosi's article and kind of what he said in terms of the source that he obtained, talking about the Detroit Tigers and their future should they be under 500. Who's the guest we got lined up after this quick timeout?
We have Geoff Robinson of the Detroit News joining us right after this quick commercial break here on episode number 93 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.
Vito, I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a site to host all the fine audio that we were gathering. We were doing podcasts every single week, and we were trying to find a way to upload it to the internet. And we found a great site, Podomatic.com. If you're looking to start a brand new podcast, Doc and Jock, Vito, Jason, Jerry, we all recommend Podomatic. Why? Because it's easy, super user-friendly, and there's no problem with the audio links that are provided. We've posted about 500 to 600 podcasts. You've done it. I've done it. Everybody on the network has uploaded the audio, and everybody can say the same thing. It's super easy. And when we want to share the podcast with the universe, boom, right after we upload it, we have a link ready to share. And that's why we've been using Podomatic since September of 2013. If you're going to start a brand new podcast, and if you want to reach the heights of success that the Detroit Sports Podcast Network has, we recommend one site, Podomatic.com. And Vito, I hear we got another supporter in line that's going to work with us here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
We do, in the Detroit Sports Commission, which gets a lot of these events throughout the city of Detroit, the greater Detroit area, to come to the city and into the greater Detroit area to host its events. So the Detroit Sports Commission is largely responsible for setting up and organizing these big time, smaller scale and bigger scale events, such as the NCAA men's college basketball tournament. I mean, big time events that are coming to the city of Detroit. And one of the events that it has put on now for a long, long time, the Detroit Sports Commission, that is the Prep Kickoff Classic that it's put on for a long, long time. And that's an event coming up in August 24th through the 26th, with a lot of exciting matchups. 7 different matchups with 14 teams, that means, from Thursday through Saturday of that weekend in August.
So if you want additional information regarding what events are coming to town sporting-wise, go check out DetroitSports.org. That's the Detroit Sports Commission. You can find them at DetroitSports.org.
And now joining us on episode number 93 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is Mr. Geoff Robinson of the Detroit News. Jeff, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Vito?
Very good. Glad to have you on. As we had talked at the Horizon League Tournament, Motor City Madness, at the Joe, about you coming on to do a segment as you do some blogs for the Tigers, for the Detroit News, and wanted to have you on this week specifically to chat about a variety of items. But first and foremost, Jeff, let's get into the topic of Tyler Collins getting DFA'd. And kind of out of nowhere, in my opinion, as you look at him and the guys that are competing or also play that center field position, and the guys specifically this season, Jeff, that have played at least 5 games in center, and you look at their offensive numbers, and none of those numbers are very sexy, including Collins, who has struggled mightily in recent memory. Thing is, for me, I don't know if they should have DFA'd him at this point with that big-time void that I'm speaking of in center, with the competition that he has in center. What is your take on the Tigers deciding to DFA Tyler Collins, though?
Well, I got to say, I'm not really too surprised by it. I mean, the guy had, I think his recent stretch was 460 or something like that. And, I mean, I know he had no options left, so I think that was why they were a little hesitant to get rid of him. But honestly, he just wasn't cutting it. I don't think anybody's going to claim him, because I think if another team claims him, they have to put him on their active roster. I might be wrong there, but that's how I came to understand it. So I think there's a good chance you find him back in Toledo. He's still in the system. You gotta cycle through these young guys all year, because they're trying to find something. They're trying to see what they got with all these guys, and I think, just keeping him on the roster, eating up a spot, wasn't doing this team any good.
And see, now the problem that I have is the logic they used is that they couldn't deal with his lack of hitting any longer. But then you look at Mikey Matuk, who is all glove. He has a negative .2 WAR in 23 games this season, hasn't produced at the plate at all. Now, Collins has a WAR of 0 through 40 games, according to Baseball Reference. But really, you're going to use that logic for why you decided to DFA Collins when you already have a guy on your roster playing center field who is very much lackluster at the plate, and even more lackluster than Tyler Collins?
No, Mikey Matuk's not someone I'm really going to go to bat for, to tell you the truth. I mean, you might see a lot of Romine in center field the rest of the season. I think they want to get Jacoby Jones some more bats. I know that. I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to turn out for him this year, but I think they just want to get him that experience and hope that, he can carry that forward a couple years to come.
And by the way, Matuk, Romine, Jacoby Jones, and Tyler Collins have combined to produce a WAR of 0 this season.
I saw you tweet that out earlier, yeah.
That tells you about how desperate they are in center field at this point in the season.
It makes you wonder why that entire fire sale they were supposedly having last offseason, and all they got rid of was Cameron Maiden.
Yeah,
wonder why they would have done that.
A guy that could badly use right now, who's actually doing pretty darn well, or well enough and a lot better than the Tigers' options in center field.
Well, Maven's not having such a hot year, but he was hitting in front of Cabrera last year, so he was getting a lot of good pitches. It seemed to be like a good combination to me.
Absolutely.
Now, Geoff, how would you describe the week that was for the Detroit Tigers? Obviously, one of the hottest button topics that's lighting up our Twitter page and this podcast is this whole notion that the Tigers were tired going into the series versus Houston and going into the series versus the White Sox. Everybody's up in arms. Everybody's tweeting about it. Everybody's weighing in regarding the week that was and the word that came out and kind of the excuses that came out. How would you describe the week that was, and how do you weigh in on the Tigers' lack of success being on they're tired?
That's not a message that's going to sell in Detroit at all. I mean, you got people waking up at 3 a.m, working till 3 p.m. the next day, and they're not making as much as these guys are. I mean, I get it. You're up late. You got to travel. Traveling wears on people. It does. But, I mean, it's May. If these guys are tired now, how are they going to be, if they're still within 5 games, if it's still conceivable that they can reach the top of the division in late August, how tired are they going to be after the dog days of summer kicking?
Well, yeah, that's the issue that comes to mind for me, too, and I already brought it up. I harped upon it earlier before you joined us, Geoff. It's that there are a myriad of problems with the Tigers roster as it's currently constructed. And it starts with the higher-ups and the front office head honcho in Al Avila, in my opinion. And I think we have to start blaming him much more for the Tigers' serious roster issues than we have previously, at least more than the widespread or mainstream media has. And even myself, I'm at fault myself for always blaming Brad Ausmus and harping upon his mistakes in game and for this or that. Now I think we have to start focusing on Al Avila and what he has done erroneously since taking over as general manager of the Tigers.
I mean, Dombrowski, he gutted the farm system for those big names. I mean, he shares the brunt of that blame too. I still put a little bit heavier blame on Ausmus. I mean, you knew Tyler Collins was teetering on the brink of getting DFA'd, and the guy was hitting number 2 in the lineup. A guy in a stretch that he was in. I mean, that's just inconceivable to me. Avila, I mean, yeah, if he doesn't part ways with Ausmus after this season, assuming the Tigers go as they've been going at the beginning of the season, then yeah, I mean, you got to start wondering what's going on there. But I think there's probably going to be a mandate from ownership to get rid of Ausmus. They picked up his option this year. There's no years left on that, so they're just kind of, letting it play out with the group they have now, kind of like they're doing with the roster. And I think Avila, he's built up enough trust with those guys. I mean, does Chris Ilitch, try not to get off topic, but does Chris Ilitch really know what he's doing, want to bring in somebody new? Or does he want to face, that, he thinks he can trust for the next few years down the road? But I mean, yeah, with Avila, it starts with doing what everybody wants him to do and getting rid of Osmus. I don't know that I'd be quite ready to pull the trigger on him at the end of this year until we see whether or not he gets rid of some of these pieces and can make, some big trades to replenish the farm system and, get some younger blood in here for the end of the season. If he can pull something good off that can get the fans behind him, I think people will be fine with him staying.
Well, who's the alternative? It's always that, as you noted, too. And does Chris Ilitch know enough baseball-related stuff to make that decision that will bring in a better general manager than Al Avila is, a guy that has a ton of experience and has done some good stuff, especially as a Major League Baseball scout and as the assistant GM to Dave Dombrowski, his predecessor.
If Avila can't get good young players this summer, you got to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. But I think you got to give him these next few months to kind of see what he can do with all these tradable assets he has.
And that's my next question. I guess it's segueing right into it, Geoff. Is it the time to move on from these oldies but goodies on the Tigers roster that are taking up a lot of the payroll, too? And at the same time, to get new blood in here and to get younger as a franchise?
Well, that's the problem is their contracts. I mean, Miggy's hitting 250, 260 right now. I mean, he's still got like $200 million left on his deal, I think. So, I mean, someone out there like the Yankees, the Red Sox, Dombrowski's always willing to cough up the dough. But, I mean, their biggest tradable asset has to be J.D. Martinez. Unless they can unload Miggy and Verlander and sign J.D., which, that would be the holy grail right there for moves this year. If you could unload those two aging stars and sign J.D. Martinez. But, I mean, as far as it looks right now, I mean, J.D. is their biggest tradable asset because it's a guy you don't assume is going to be back next year. So you get rid of him, and you can probably get two young studs for him and hope that they turn out like Michael Fulmer.
Well, and that's the thing. I think the Tigers, if they get an offer of that caliber that brings you some nice young, I think even position players, I think they have to start looking at building their farm system up with position players because they have some nice young rotation arms at least. Now, they could always use more arms, right? You're never in a position where you don't need more arms. I think everybody wants to have a ton of arms, and especially young ones. But for me, where the franchise currently is at, I think they need more position players going forward. What do you think?
Oh, they do, for sure. They definitely need some help in the outfield, especially if they're going to lose J.D. I mean, then you don't have a center fielder or a right fielder. You've got Upton in left field, and I mean, yeah, it'd be great to unload his contract. The dream scenario would be being able to unload Jordan Zimmerman's contract, but nobody's touching that. So, I mean, but yeah, position players are a need. I mean, with pitchers, I'd like to see Buck Farmer get a couple more starts, see if he can build on what he did last week. Maybe he takes Matt Boyd's spot in the rotation, but they definitely need to replenish position players.
Let me ask you.
I mean, I think they probably need a new shortstop too, honestly.
They do. I mean, he's all glove. I mean, he can't hit really, it looks like, to save his life. And when he does, it's all singles. Now, I know shortstops, at least in the past, have been guys that have just, got on base and hit lightly.
Yeah.
But he hits so light that it's almost not even worth it to have him as your everyday shortstop. And then you look at Dixon Machado, is he really the answer? I mean, that's a question for the Tigers right now. And as it looks currently, I don't think he's the answer at shortstop either.
I don't like judging young guys too much until they get a week or two to play, every day. I mean, it's got to be hard sitting on the bench for 4 days and then be asked to go out there and perform. So I think the jury's still out on Machado. I mean, Machado and Jones, those are guys I'd like to see get some playing time. Iglesias, he's just not going to cut it. I mean, you say he's all glove, and he makes some really spectacular plays, but he makes some boneheaded plays too. So, I mean, he's just not cutting it. I mean, They need help everywhere, honestly.
They do. I mean, you look at catcher, you look in center field, as we already harped upon a ton, and then at shortstop, and how nice would it be right now to have Eugenio Suarez at shortstop? My God, they would love to have him there, a guy that's one of the best hitters now in the NL.
Yeah, no doubt. They really needed Alfredo Simon, though, huh?
My God, yeah, what an albatross of a deal that was. Did not work out in the Tigers' favor whatsoever. Gave up bombs all the time.
Now, Geoff, do you have a little bit of hope, though, that the AL Central is not really that strong? The Tigers obviously can have the potential to beat up on the likes of Kansas City this week and potentially do some things to maybe get back in it. Because you got to remember, just one good week, one solid week, they get back to 500, and then you say to yourself, okay, if they can just hang around until late August, then maybe they have a chance to make that push because of the fact that the AL Central is just not that strong overall?
I mean, I really thought at the beginning of the year they could challenge the Indians for the AL Central. I mean, nobody saw Minnesota coming, obviously, but I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it to risk it. I mean, let's say you're 5 games behind the Indians in August. You're probably not going to catch them. Maybe you're 2 or 3 out of the wild card. I mean, I don't like risking your future on a wild card game at all because it's one game, you know. And if you can get 2 young studs for JD Martinez, if someone's willing to buy Verlander, which I think, you know, that's not out of the realm of possibility, then I just think people are tired of this group, honestly. A lot of the fans, you know, that I've talked to, family members, friends, they're just kind of worn on this group, you know. They had their time. 2013, 2012, those were their years to get it done, and they just didn't. And I don't know how much hope people really have for this team or how fun it would be in the end because people are hating so hard nowadays.
Well, the Tigers fan base has grown sour about this current roster.
So how much fun would it even be if they, you know, got back into it and then they ultimately let them down? I mean, it's just a bad situation.
And Jeff, as you know too, the attendance numbers at Comerica Park have dipped as well because of that, with the fan base being the case. And Geoff Robinson of the Detroit News will leave you with this, a 2-part question. How likely is it for the Tigers to re-sign JD Martinez, and how likely is it that the Tigers become sellers as we get closer and closer to that non-waiver trade deadline?
Now, how likely is it they become sellers in the mind of the fans or the mind of management?
I guess where they have a large-scale sale that could be considered a fire sale, I guess, is what I'm asking you.
I mean, you can't, if you're trading, obviously we're not sure if management knows what fire sale means when all that ends up being is trading a $7 million center fielder in the offseason, but I think they're going to be sellers. I mean, there were reports coming out this week that they had a month to turn this around, and I don't know what turn it around means to management. If that just means, you know, get back to 500, because they're 3 or 4 games under right now. I think they're going to have a fire sale, but the problem is who can they unload? You know, I think someone might bite on Verlander. At least I don't know. For some reason, I keep seeing the Dodgers calling Verlander over there to team up with Kershaw and try to ride them to a championship. But I don't think you're getting rid of Cabrera. I think Verlander and JD Martinez are your best hope for a fire sale this summer, and I think they might do it, honestly.
And you know what? People had talked about, I did myself on previous episodes of Tigers Talk, that they might end up dealing Ian Kinsler. And it looked like that for a long time, but now he's on the DL, which doesn't help out his trade value whatsoever.
Kinsler, I mean, that's a guy I think people like having around. He doesn't cost too much. I can't remember if he's a free agent after this year.
He's coming up. He is coming up. And the talk has been about trading him for a while because he will be due for a big payday, or they think at least a larger scale, you know, esque payday. And I don't know if they really intend on keeping him long term as he gets older and older. That's the thing with the Tigers. You know, if they want to get younger, get that fresh blood in here, it's whether or not they really want to consider then signing these guys that look like they're past their primes too.
Well, then you have to think about trading Kinsler. I know he likes playing here, so maybe they think they can re-sign him if they are able to unload some of those bigger contracts. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's just a mess right now. Management seems kind of tone deaf to their fans, and we'll see what happens. I hope they start selling off because I think it's time to turn the page from some of these guys.
Yeah, it's tough to watch them right now, and I think the best case scenario is that the Tigers do end up selling. And I think we'll see that. And with that, Geoff Robinson of the Detroit News, great stuff from you. Always a pleasure speaking with you, and have a good one.
All right, thanks for having me on, Vito.
Thank you. And that was Geoff Robinson of the Detroit News. Great to have him on for the very first time on Tigers Talk, talking about a variety of trade candidates for the Tigers, as it looks like they might end up selling and should. He really strongly believes that they should sell. I more and more am jumping on the bandwagon that they should as well, because it looks like it's in the best interests of the Tigers, too, to do so, Doc.
And as we said earlier, John Morosi got a source, and the source said, look, if the Tigers are under 500 by the time June ends, the month of June, then the likelihood is they're going to revert back to their thinking back in November to have a fire sale, and that means any veteran would be made available. Now, I would have thought, once that report kind of was made public, I would have thought that the Tigers would have fought, scratched, clawed, done anything in order to keep this group together. One last hoorah. But unfortunately, the talent is not there, and you're starting this fire sale remember, you've let go of Mike Pelfrey. You've let go of others. You've let go now of Tyler Collins. You've let go of guys that aren't contributing. And maybe, just maybe, you might be letting go of JD Martinez and others as well. So for me, I thought that it had a reverse effect. I think once that report came out, many people said, you know what? I was supporting the team. Now I'm not. Now I'm hoping that the Tigers end up losing in the month of June. And anyone that's listened to this podcast network knows that that's how I felt, 2 years ago. They should have started the process of selling. So when I heard that report, my first thought was, I kind of hope they lose the rest of the way, lose out in June and start the process of the fire sale. Not that I want the Tigers to lose and be bums. I want them to start the process of deconstruction. And if there's any path for that, if that's the onus, then that's what I need to see, because everybody's seeing it. I think Geoff and you have hit on it. Callers to sports radio have talked about it. There is roster fatigue. I think people are ready for a new crop of talent to support, and that this one, many do believe, don't have enough talent to get us to the promised land, and they've moved on.
And that's why I think you want to trade JD Martinez. You want to trade Ian Kinsler. Both guys have contracts expiring at the end of this season. Kinsler, as well, could be due for a big payday, that means, as his contract is expiring. Now, there is a team option for him that the Tigers have to decide whether or not to pick up for Ian Kinsler. Will they do so? Well, now that he's on the disabled list and is getting older and older, maybe he's starting to go on the downside. And I thought we were seeing that at one point in the past with Kinsler as a Tiger. Now, the thing is, he had a bounce-back season last year, won a Gold Glove. So really, if anything, they should have dealt him. I harped on this too, Doc. They should have dealt him during the offseason. Now his trade value seems to be decreasing. He's on the disabled list. He's getting older and older. The trade value for a guy like Ian Kinsler isn't sky high. For JD Martinez, it is. And that's why people keep pinpointing, and insiders do too, like Morosi, like Ken Rosenthal, that they would trade JD Martinez first and foremost to get better, maybe even for now, but specifically for the future. As Ken Rosenthal, by the way, you brought up Morosi and what he reported. Rosenthal, also of Fox Sports, just reported that Tigers are looking to trade veteran pieces for guys that can help them win now, but also in the future. And now it's very hard to win a trade and to accomplish both in a trade, to get players that can help you now and that can also be good in the future. Because guys that contribute, that are younger guys that will be able to contribute in the future, can they really contribute now in 2017? Maybe even in 2018. Might be too soon for those guys that you're planning on building around for the future to do so, to be able to contribute productively this season and next as well as in 2019 and 2020, which is when they're going to be more ready as major leaguers. So for the Tigers' sake, they're still not, I think, buying into full-fledged a fire sale and into getting completely young and shedding the old ways of the Tigers and just getting away from this current roster as it stands right now, which is in a win-now mode. And the approach, I think, of the front office as it nears the non-waiver trade deadline, I think will be more and more to sell off pieces, though, and to sell off veteran pieces specifically, such as Ian Kinsler. Will he increase his trade value by then? If he does, I think he could be dealt and should be. And JD Martinez, it's clear-cut that the Tigers should consider dealing him, as right now, from all reports, Doc, as we've talked about ad nauseum too on this very podcast, JD isn't very interested in re-signing with the Tigers long-term. So if you know that, get rid of him now while you can get something in return for him, right? A nice package of 3 young players, maybe 2 position players, and a nice arm. Tigers need to be looking to do that much more than to win now. And also because of the fact, which was the case last year too, when you looked at their farm system this season too isn't looking the greatest. It's not full of bona fide top prospects. So because of that, you know what? They really can't even try to win now. So it's much more worth it for the Tigers' sake to boot on this season and to try to win, maybe even as soon as 2018. But you're not going to win in the present moment. They're not going to win it all in 2017. And that's why you boot on this season, Doc.
And now my favorite part of the podcast, Buster of the Week and Toast of the Town. For me, it's going to sound weird. It's the same guy, Brad Ausmus. Buster of the Week for the comments in terms of talking about the schedule, enacting a bunch of excuses, talking about the awful week that was for the Detroit Tigers. I think Brad Ausmus did himself a disservice by inviting strong skepticism and strong criticism to his ball club. Toast of the Town, Brad Ausmus as well, because look, when you realize that you had a player on the team that went 0 for May in terms of his struggles offensively, Tyler Collins, many people thought about him, why is this guy out there? Why is this guy part of the team? This is a guy that flicked off the fans. This is a guy that, has rebounded from that, but unfortunately his time had come for the Detroit Tigers. They were tired of waiting for him to turn it around. They didn't feel like he was going to contribute to the Detroit Tigers. So after a game versus the White Sox and the continued struggles of Tyler Collins, was called into a meeting, and Brad Ausmus told him, look, we're going in a different direction. So he gets toast of the town for doing that, starting the process of deconstructing this team. So, Buster of the Week, toast of the town, same dude, Brad Ausmus.
Brad Ausmus could be it, but I got to focus on the players. Tyler Collins, who you brought up, he is my Buster of the Week, but also you could give it to Jordan Zimmerman. How about the fact that he got slammed on Sunday by the White Sox? Not a good look from Jay Zim, a guy that you need to see improvement out of, and we haven't seen that yet in this 2017 campaign. Collins wasn't showing near enough improvement as well at the plate to warrant him keeping a roster spot, so he was DFA'd. So those two guys for me are very worthy of my Buster of the Week selections. Now, toast of the town, you could very well give it to the same guys that we have for a long, long time on this very podcast, which are JD Martinez, who has slumped a little bit, so really doesn't fully deserve it, but also to Alex Avila. And I think the guy we have to give it to, though, is Buck Farmer. Came out of nowhere, making a spot start, and struck out double-digit batters against the White Sox over this past weekend. Buck Farmer, I think, warrants my selection, with that being said, of toast of the town, Doc.
Yes, sir. Great podcast, Vito. Always enjoy talking Detroit Tigers. Right now, I am definitely upset about the week that was for the Tigers, but at the same time, I said it last week on Doc and Jock, and I'll say it again here. I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm a Team Sal guy, but at the same time, I do realize, look, the Tigers are playing the Kansas City Royals, and it's not like the Kansas City Royals are world beaters. The Tigers have an opportunity with some rest, per se, to do some things, and you're playing the likes of the White Sox, Minnesota. You're getting back around to playing a lot more series versus the AL Central, a noted weak division, and many people said the month of May was going to be brutal. We said it in our preview when we looked at the schedule. We're like, whoa, they're going to play a lot of games on the road in May. If they can just weather the storm, then they have an opportunity to kind of keep it close. But many people are looking at big picture, which I'm appreciative of. I'm appreciative that people are looking at it like, can this team win the World Series? Is it time to blow it up? And many people are starting to answer the question with a big fat yes. But in looking at it, I do realize the Tigers are going to exhaust every possible opportunity to win and keep this group together. It's not going to be till probably the trade deadline until they decide. Maybe they say arbitrarily it's going to be in June, but I say the veterans will try to get in the ear of management and say, look, let's just go with it, ride it out, and it's going to be up to management to listen to that, but also make the tough decisions. And I hope they realize what you've said and what other analysts have said, that you cannot hold on to assets like JD Martinez and let them walk for free. So the deconstruction, I believe, is coming, but I don't think it's going to come as soon as many people want.
Really quick, to end this very podcast, the series against the Royals, how many games did the Tigers take after taking Game 1 Monday night on Memorial Day?
You
think so? Because they should.
2 or 3.
Verlander's going Tuesday against a rookie, making his major league debut. Come on, you got to get that game. I don't care that you're in KC at Kauffman Stadium. Game 3 Wednesday, Matthew Boyd's been miserable in May with a 6.92 earned run average and 0-4 record. He is facing Ian Kennedy, who has equally struggled all season long for the Royals. They could very well sweep, but they should at least win 2 out of 3, definitely, Doc.
Great stuff, sir. I look forward to chatting with you about the Detroit Tigers, and I think it's going to be a better week next week than it was this week.
We'll see you again for next week for episode number 94 of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. Talk to you then. Adios.